Thank you for your attendance tonight at this wonderful event, Avenue to Awareness. My name is Jordan Wilson. I'm in the Community Development Team with Gladstone Regional Council. Tonight we'll go on a journey with a group of amazing young men and women who will not only share some personal experiences with mental health, but also some important messages around how we can take time to improve our own mental wellbeing. Before we go any further, I will give the floor to Youth Council member Abby Willis, who will conduct the acknowledgement to country, as well as recognise some important people who have contributed a lot throughout the journey so far.
So hi everybody, my name is Abby Willis and I'm a member of the Gladstone Youth Council. I will be helping to MC this evening and I'd like to take the time to thank you all for being here today. Firstly, in the spirit of reconciliation, I would like to recognise that we are meeting on country for which the Baili, Gurang, and Tarabeleng Bunda people have been traditional custodians since time eternal. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here tonight. They hold the memories, traditions, cultures and hopes of Indigenous Australia. On behalf of my fellow Youth Council members, we would like to thank Rosebery and Headspace Gladstone, specifically the Youth and Community Engagement Leader, Rachel Donovan. We would also like to thank CQ University, in particular Owen Nevin and Alison Murdoch, who are in the audience tonight along with Rachel. Additionally, we extend our thanks to Michelle Lowry from Renew You Counselling, also in the audience. We couldn't have delivered this great event without your support, and we appreciate the time you have all taken to be here. Lastly, we thank the Gladstone Region Councillor here tonight, Councillor Khan Goodluck. I'll now pass back over to Jordan for an overview of how everything will run.
Thank you, Abby. We will tonight see 8 speakers share their stories with a brief intermission at the halfway point, where we can all go outside, enjoy some light refreshments, and hopefully continue to speak on the important subject of youth mental health tonight. Avenue to Awareness is a project we are delivering in the hope of reducing the stigma around mental health, whilst also encouraging people to take time, speak up and seek help when needed. We believe young people delivering this message is extremely powerful, and we hope that it will urge some people in the room tonight to implement change in their own lives and also be the drivers of advancement in their daily environments. I'd now like to invite Gladstone Region Councillor Khan Goodluck up to say a few words. Thank you, Khan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the inaugural Avenue to Awareness event that we're hosting tonight. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we gather here tonight, the Gurang, the Baili and the Tarabeleng Bunda people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, for they hold the dreams and hopes of Indigenous Australians. I'd also like to acknowledge the Gladstone Region Youth Council and the Chair, Nikita, who I saw here earlier, and also the members of the Headspace youth crew, and look forward to hearing from many of you tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Khan Goodluck and I'm one of the councillors for the Gladstone Regional Council. I also am the chair of the Headspace Consortium here in Gladstone, where we work closely with the lead agency Rosebery and a number of other local service providers to provide support for our local Headspace program. I'd like to acknowledge Cole from Rosebery and also David from Headspace, who are here with us tonight. The Gladstone region is only too familiar with the impacts that mental health issues can have on our community. We have a high percentage of our population that is transient, meaning they don't often stay here and settle here, they come and go. We also have a lot of people with our industry that work long and often unsociable hours. So that can have great impacts on our mental health of a community such as Gladstone regions. We also have in many cases great challenges in accessing professional medical services such as psychiatric and psychology services in the Gladstone region. We have 2.2 times the national average of suicide here in the Gladstone region, which is a confronting statistic, and it means we also have 2.2 times the families and friends in our community that are trying to go on with their lives whilst coping with that loss. As society learns more about how to tackle the issue of mental health, We know one thing for certain, and that is that we need to destigmatise the issue. And to do that, we need to talk about it. We need to have the conversations and the discussions. We need to talk with our families. We need to talk to our mates. And that is why I'm privileged and excited to be a part of this evening's showcase, which aims to raise awareness in particular, obviously, of youth mental health in our community. A recent report by the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners identified that more than half of all ordinary GP visits are actually dealing with mental health issues. So you might think that most GP visits were dealing with a cough and cold or a sore elbow or something, but it's actually to do with mental health issues. The World Health Organization has also identified that half of all mental health conditions start by the age of 14, but most cases go undetected and go often untreated. It's statistics like this that mean initiatives like the Avenue to Awareness are more relevant and more important than ever before. Because our society is experiencing change at an unprecedented rate, technology has advanced more in the last 30 years than it has in the last 300 years, which is pretty astonishing when you think about it. And with these rapid changes in technology and society in the space of just one single generation, our young people today are facing challenges that more often than not, the adults and parents of today are not equipped to deal with, because those challenges are vastly different to the challenges that they had to deal with in their time. Tonight we will listen to speakers from the Gladstone Region's Youth Council share their experiences with mental health, all in the name of increasing awareness, encouraging self-care, speaking up and seeking help. Tonight's Avenue to Awareness initiative is an example of community organisations working together for a collective cause. I would like to thank once again Rosebery's Headspace program for coming on board to provide expertise and most importantly to provide support for our youth members speaking tonight. And I would also like to thank CQU, Owen and the team for graciously allowing us to host this event here tonight. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your attendance here and your participation tonight. And I hope we can all take away some valuable insights and understanding from the presentations that we will see and the discussions that they will generate. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. I'd now like to invite Community Development Specialist / Engagement Specialist, Council All-Rounder. For those that know Brady, you'd understand. Brady Walmsley to come and say a few words, please, before we get into our young people.
Thank you, Jordan. And look, obviously we're all gathered here tonight to hear the young people speak, and I certainly don't want to hold us up from getting to that. And I'm following the humour of Jordan, who has already shown his ability as the MC tonight, and the heartfelt message of Councillor Carr and Goodluck, who have largely set the scene. I suppose there's just two things I wanted to say before we get into the presentations tonight, and it's less about the event and less about modern day, but more the history of the genesis of the Avenue to Awareness theme. And Council hold the responsibility for the facilitation of our interagency networks, and for those that aren't familiar with that, that's the community organisations and key stakeholders in our community gathering monthly to talk about emerging trends and to talk about serious issues. And over the last 12 months, my team, and Jordan in particular, who's responsible as the chair of those meetings, has worked really, really hard to ensure that we come together to share the emerging trends and the issues, but equally, our focus is on finding some sort of resolution to those issues, because we believe wholeheartedly that we live in a great community, and there are challenges, no doubt, but we want to make sure we're continuing to work forward towards those. And what I'm most proud of is tonight is just a fantastic example of the collaboration and the strength of our community in delivering something that can be really positive on such a sensitive issue. And by no means do I think that you'll hear from our 8 young people tonight and that we'll eradicate youth mental health. That's just not the reality, but certainly through their courage and our collaboration, I think we're certainly taking a step in the right direction. So to the community, thank you. I really appreciate that. Secondly, and most importantly, outside of the young people, we haven't just thrown an event without serious consideration to the sensitivity of the issue, both for those that are asked to speak and for those that are asked to listen. We've put a great program of support around these young people who are going to present tonight, and that's largely been driven by Rosebery's Headspace program, who have attended meetings with our young people, who have screened their speeches for triggering words and to make sure that their responsible presentations, have gone through mental health screenings ahead of tonight and will do so in debrief as well. So whilst it's a serious nature, we've taken it seriously in ensuring that they're prepared, and to Headspace in particular, we thank you. As well as to Gladstone Regional Council, Jordan Wilson in particular, who is the driver of our youth council team. And certainly it would be remiss of me not to again identify both Rachel and Jordan and their importance in this role tonight. They'll stay behind the scenes as much as they can because they recognise it's about the youth and the young people speaking, but it would be impossible without their really meaningful contributions. So thank you both very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck and Brady, for your words. Mental health is more common than we realise. In this room, 1 in 5 of us will experience mental illness in this year alone. Over a lifetime, almost half of all Australians will experience mental illness. So why is there such a stigma around speaking out about ill mental health? Whilst the answer to this question is still under debate, our focus should be on what we can do to reduce the stigma rather than why it exists at all. Mental and physical well-being are tightly interwoven. This can be shown in cases of people experiencing sudden physical impairments that may later develop depression. Or a more personal example like mine, when experiencing anxiety, my body shakes and tremors, I sweat a lot, and butterflies in my stomach are amplified into bats. Yet throughout my mainstream schooling life, an absence due to physical injury was expected, but an absence due to mental illness was unheard of. When I first moved to Gladstone 4 years ago, I was invited to a meditation class by chance. I did not expect that after this class, meditation would become a regular part of my self-care routine. It was really, really strange at first. Laying on a yoga mat on the floor next to a bunch of strangers with a calm voiced lady encouraging me to relax does take you back to kindergarten nap time. However, after the initial mind chatter, I began to realise why meditation is so heavily promoted towards managing mental well-being. It was my first experience of mind and body working together to help relax and seek clarity. I was imagining my physical body sinking into the floor whilst my mind focused purely on what I was told to imagine. Like anything, it does take practice to get to a point of minimal mind wander and maximum focus. However, I learned something extremely valuable in this. I was told that when my mind wanders, I should acknowledge the thought and redirect my brain to what I was focusing on. I was able to apply this in my everyday life to acknowledge unwanted thoughts and regain focus. Meditation remains my tested and true #1 self-care strategy. In the case of a physical injury, like a broken bone, it would be very unusual not to seek help. Very few people would think, it's okay, I'll get through this on my own. I can heal without help. So why are we so reluctant to seek help for our mental health? I hope one day in the near future that speaking out about mental illness can be taken as seriously and acted upon as quickly as speaking out about a broken bone. We will now have the Youth Council members begin presenting their speeches. Before they begin, I just wanted to say that speaking out about mental health, especially from a lived experience, can be extremely nerve-wracking. So we should all take a minute to applaud our youth and our Youth Council members here today, brave enough to share their experiences with you. So without further ado, I'd like to present our first speaker for the night, Werner, sharing his speech titled Obvious Yet Overlooked with an Insight into Self-Care.
You would have thought these things would be difficult to handle while you're shaking. Anyway, good evening, everyone. I hope we're all well. My name is Werner Biermann, and I think it's important to know a little bit about me before I start to waffle on like I normally do. I am a massive musical theatre nerd. I'm in the upcoming production of The Wizard of Oz next year. You should come and watch it. And I am now in grade 11 in the new system, the ATAR system, which is probably the worst thing since unsliced bread. Now, before I start talking about anything, who in this room knows what self-care is? All right, keep your hand up if you know what it is. You can keep them up just a little bit longer if you practice it regularly. So a lot of hands go down, and that's what I'm here to talk about. Self-care, it's pretty obvious, right? You just take care of yourself, and it's, like I said, obvious yet overlooked. You can take care of yourself in many different ways. Obviously, the natural ones are eating healthy, getting regular exercise. They're really difficult, clearly. I can basically tell you about every single time I could have used self-care. School, before an exam, you're always freaking out, you're worried, maybe you won't do well. And then you have those rare occurrences where you think you'll do well and then you just turn out to fail. But try not to focus on those. With musicals, you've got those moments in the wings where you're waiting to get on stage and you're shaking, like I am now. And it gets better with the more experience you have, but overall, you still need to make sure you take care of yourself. And finally, life in general. Life, it's probably, oh my god, no, obviously it's one of the biggest things you'll ever have to go through. But yes, you should be taking care of yourself as much as you can. Now, there's a massive importance to self-care. Just taking some time out of your very busy day just to relax a little bit. Who would have thought relaxing would be so relaxing? Just that moment of tranquil, just meditating on your bed, sleeping. I've lost so much of that. It's also healthy, not only for your body, if you're eating well and, keeping up with a regular exercise routine. It's also good for your soul, if you like to meditate. But most importantly, your mind. Your mind is the most powerful thing you have, and you need to keep that thing well. Obviously, with some cases, it doesn't happen instantly, unless you're talking about a warm bath. Clearly, going back, eating well, staying healthy, it's very difficult. You need to stick to it, you need to stay on it, you need to make sure that you can follow it through until the results really start to show, and then you find that further motivation. Other examples, like my own, includes just lighting a candle, letting that scent really get to you, and just relaxing, reading a book. So overall, what I would like to really get through is that self-care, obviously, while it's something that everyone should know about, it's not, unfortunately. It's very important to practice, even if it is just for 10, 20 minutes a day. It has massive impacts on your life, whether it be in the short term or the long term. Now, before I leave, I would like to obviously wish well to the rest of my counselors. If it's anything for them like it is for me, they'll be nervous. And if it's at any point too emotionally moving, I've got Plum Call on speed dial. Yes, I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Tough act to follow. Well said. Really important message about self-care. Look, something so simple like Verna said, but often way too overlooked. So well done. Great message. I'd now like to invite Nikita up to speak. Thank you, Nikita.
Good evening. My name is Nikita and I am a perfectionist. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a perfectionist as someone who wants everything to be perfect and who demands the highest standards possible. Thus, by this definition, I am a perfectionist. And I think my parents who are in the audience tonight can vouch for this on my behalf. The many days I spent at my computer during high school ensuring my assignments were infallible, the countless hours I spend ensuring I've appropriately completed all the unnecessary reading my university degree requires of me, even when it's not actually mandatory. In seeking out perfectionism as something that I would ultimately consider a flaw, it's also something that makes me, me. The insanely organised, driven and dedicated woman that stands before you tonight. So I'd be hesitant to label perfectionism as something inherently bad, though there are dire consequences for the incessant pursuing of something that has no real criteria, no evidence to support it, and no model to base one's ideal on. And so when perfectionism divulges from school, from work, and from something with a criteria to mark you, you will always be left unsatisfied, chasing a goal that's not attainable because the only standard you have is one that you made in your head or the one you think society is judging you by. For me and being my absolute harshest critic, I deemed my body and my physical health of an unacceptable, poor standard. I experience a mental health difficulty every day, and every day I work to overcome it. Orthorexia is the obsession to consume proper, healthful food. Now I know exactly what you're thinking. How can an obsession to be healthy be a bad thing? Well, understanding the nutritional content of food and labeling food as either good or bad is not necessarily bad. Though for someone with orthorexia, they become so fixated on their apparent healthy eating that it negatively impacts their well-being. I do not have orthorexia yet. Though, me being me, it's a very real threat to my well-being and most importantly, my mental health. For my entire life, I have experienced a plethora of health problems, as I'm sure anybody has. Now, these were nothing serious and they didn't require significant medical attention. Though they gave me a lot of pain, discomfort, and embarrassment. I was frequently bloated, had eczema that covered my face, arms, and hands. And in an attempt to overcome this, I decided to follow an autoimmune protocol diet, or AIP for short. Now, this is extremely restrictive. And when I say restrictive, I mean you can't have dairy, gluten, nightshade vegetables, don't know what they are, nuts, seeds, eggs. Pretty much the only thing you can eat is lettuce leaves. And a lot of them. Though by following this diet, you are able to understand how your body works and identify your own personal food sensitivities. So for me, I can't have a lot of dairy because it's the cause of my digestive pain and eczema. Being on this diet, you experience this whole other level of health. Suddenly, everything's working really well. I mean, you look great, you feel great, and it's not really sustainable. It's not meant to be followed forever. When I was on the diet, I felt great physically, but mentally, I wasn't doing okay. And fast forward 6 months after the completion of the diet, I still wasn't okay. I had an extremely obsessive and unhealthy view of food. I labelled food based on categories of good and bad. And for those of you who don't spend a lot of time in the health sphere, essentially anything that comes to food is highly contested and highly contradicting. Everyone has their own ideas about what constitutes as good and bad. For me, I avoided everything. No chocolate, no chips, no sweets, no biscuits, no pasta, no takeout. Everything down to the oil my food was cooked in. I analysed every aspect of my plate. I used to love going to restaurants to eat out with my friends as this was a really social time for me. Though going out to eat gave me such bad food anxiety, I would end up feeling really sick. All because I'd be worked up over the most menial aspects like the percentage of sugar in the salad dressing or what oil the food was cooked in. I realised I had a problem when I began to analyse everything I put in my mouth. Nothing was off limits. Not even bananas, because I was afraid the carbohydrate intake would be too much for that day. After months and months of beating myself up over this and labelling the food in good or bad, I decided I needed a little bit of help. Every time I walked past the mirror, I would double check to see if I was bloated. And if I thought I was bloated, then I'd beat myself up over the fact that I'd indulged in a Tim Tam or a little bit of salad dressing. I'd use food as a way to control what I was eating and a way to make myself feel like I wasn't feeling sick all the time. At this point, I had a really, really negative view of the way that I looked, but also the way I was feeling inside. I swapped my diet every day. All my conversations revolved around food. My social media feed was filled with health influencers, nutritionists, and doctors telling me what diet to be on and what food was healthy. After months of beating myself up like this, countless hours and nights spent researching food, and minutes just spent staring at the mirror, disgusted in my inability to stick to such a restrictive diet, I decided I needed some help. So I called a counsellor, who happened to also be a friend, though this was no easy feat, admitting I needed help. But after many failed attempts to try and contact her, I finally did. And after explaining my struggle with healthy eating, she explained to me and gave me tools to relieve me of that blame, shame and guilt I found surrounding foods that I had labelled bad. She explained to me that it wasn't my fault. See, what was happening was when I consumed foods that I'd labelled bad, it would trigger a fight or flight response in my body. And one thing that happens in a fight or flight response is your digestive system temporarily stops in order to combat whatever's going on. So then, eating food when my digestive system wasn't working, that was making me feel sick. Eating the bad food wasn't compromising my health, my anxiety was. My brain was working on overdrive. In order to combat this mental health difficulty, I now use things like mindful eating, in which I sit and I concentrate on the food that I'm eating, the look, the smell, the taste. I use positive affirmations to feel secure in the way that I look and the way that I'm feeling inside. Through seeking help, I was provided with a set of tools that allows me to combat my, at times, really overbearing obsession with healthy food. Through the support of my counsellor, friends and family, I don't have orthorexia yet. And in being on this journey, I've realised that mental health difficulties, they come and they go. I'm always going to seek to be healthy, and I'm always going to be a perfectionist. And that's okay, because it happens to be a quality I truly love about myself. Though I'm sort of aiming to be real, not perfect now, because many facets of perfectionism really aren't attainable. Health has no criteria, and my mental health is equal to my physical health. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. As Nikita mentioned, something that most people would consider a real positive thing had quite a negative impact on her mental health. So to get up here and share that story is really courageous. Thank you, Nikita. Our next speaker is going to be Kaylin, and she's going to speak about self-esteem.
Okay, when you're a teenager, it feels like the whole world is against you. Our relationships change with our parents, our friends, and ourselves. With the world around us changing, keeping a healthy self-esteem is crucial in developing our own identities and resilience, but it's also really hard. For most teenage girls, whether we realise it or not, we are constantly competing with each other. And it's not always our own fault. Our lives are consumed and controlled by technology. And in the 21st century, it's a near impossible task to defeat this invisible villain. So, unsurprisingly, an abundance of teenage girls are registered to at least one social media platform. In fact, up to 97% of phone-bearing teenagers have used social media in their lives. But it's not the accessibility of social media that's the problem here. It's the ripple effects that follow. To make matters worse, those with the largest social media platforms present unrealistic depictions of what beauty should look like. Shown here are among the most influential social media figures in the teenage world. Although these girls are undoubtedly beautiful by definition, their seemingly flawless images are unrealistic for those struggling with body image. If teenagers comparing and competing with each other weren't enough, the entertainment industry goes above and beyond to make sure that looking in the mirror and liking what you see is a near impossible task. To catch you up to speed, these characters belong to some of the most popular teen shows in the last decade. Although all ranging in their 20s, each of these actors were hired to play 16-year-olds. Because teens representing teens apparently isn't appealing enough. We flip through magazines, scroll through social media, and watch television, and somehow we end up hating ourselves. But the truth is that everything is not as it seems. In 2006, Dove began a campaign with the intention of exposing what actually goes into achieving these looks. My goal here isn't to shame. It's to show you that everywhere we look, we are force-fed a constructed image on what beauty is, or at least what it's supposed to look like. This in turn leaves impressionable young girls with damaged self-esteem as they struggle to compete with the impossible. Western culture has been slaving away for years to create what is deemed to be the picture of health, because health and beauty are almost always tied together. When you think about a healthy body, chances are you envision a flawless, slim figure with a perfect set of abs. In reality, the definition of health illustrates a very different picture. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. It almost insinuates that mental health is just, if not more, important than having a bikini-ready body. Here's an assortment of highly skilled, professional female athletes. Each of these ladies has a significantly different body shape, and yet every single one of them is perfectly healthy. Bodies come in all different shapes and sizes. Knowing the difference between what health is and what society thinks it should look like is imperative in breaking down self-esteem and body image issues. Without this public perception on beauty, teenagers would have one less obstacle to face when they try to love themselves and their bodies. Although technology leads the charge in influencing how teenagers see themselves, the impact of surrounding adults can have quite possibly a more significant effect. Regardless of realizing it or not, everything that you say leaves an impact on those around you. Whether you're fat-shaming a girl at the beach in her swimsuit or talking about your own bodies without love and respect, there are intergenerational effects that follow that mean your sons, your daughters, your nieces, and your friends can find it that much harder to love themselves. American playwright and activist Yves Emsler released a thought-provoking interpretation of how adult women view themselves and the lack of parallels between Western culture and traditional African culture.
Every woman is beautiful in her particular way, really. And some are more beautiful in the way that you're supposed to look. But if we developed eyes and we developed the spirit to see beauty in a different way, you would see every woman is beautiful. There was a great experience I had when I was in Africa. And this one woman in the middle of the fields outside of Nairobi in the Rift Valley, I said, "Do you like your body?" And she looked at me like I was crazy. You know, like I'd come from, she was like my body, like my body. Ooh, ooh, my body. I love my body. I love my hands. Oh, my fingers. Look at my fingers, my fingernails. Little crescent moons, my hands. Look at my hands. And my arms, so strong. They carry me along, my arms, so strong. Oh, and my legs. My legs can wrap around a man and hold him there. But my breast, I was like, whoa, whoa. And I said, I don't know how to do that, Leia. I don't know how to love my body. And she said, what's wrong with your body? And I said, well, I have this stomach. And she goes, stomach? Your stomach is meant to be seen. So she said to me, Eve, do you see that tree? Do you like that tree? Now look at that tree. Do you like that tree? Do you say this tree isn't pretty because it doesn't look like that tree? Do you say this tree is ugly because it doesn't look like that tree? You're a tree. I'm a tree. You've got to love your tree. Love your tree.
A lot of the time, the domino effects that shape how young women see themselves are unavoidable. However, as significant figures in teenagers' lives, just like mine, there are ways that you can help us to navigate the rocky journey that is puberty. Acknowledge the sources that contribute to the negative body image and see their true nature, much like the Dove campaign. Celebrate valuable achievements that support young girls' talents, skills, and personalities. Don't just focus on looks. And be a good role model. Think twice about how you speak about yourself and how you speak about others. You might not think it, but what you say and what you do makes a world of difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylin. Again, just some important messages there. The thing I took out of that is love your tree. Men, women, children, love the body you're in. Be confident. Definitely don't judge others for the way they look. I think that's something we can all take home. Be a good role model. Our next speaker is Brooke, and as you can see, the title of Brooke's presentation is called Seeing Clearly for the First Time. Before you start, Brooke, it is actually Brooke's 18th birthday today. And I'll hand it over to the birthday girl. Buckle up, everyone.
Oh, yeah. I should preface. Oh, God. It's a bit long, got carried away, and they set the bar, well, you guys set the bar really high. I have not memorised this, so don't mind me. I'm definitely reading off the screen. I'm going to make it obvious too. So, I should introduce myself. I'm Brooke. When I was asked to write a speech on mental health in youth, I naturally had a lot of ideas floating around in my head. I could talk to you about sleep deprivation, the effects of social media usage, the importance of your environment, the constant stresses of school. I mean, I've definitely had my fair share of mental health issues over the years. At school, I regularly break down in tears and have certainly been referred to the guidance counsellor multiple times. Back in 2017, I had a really bad panic attack week, and I ran away from home. I got into a stranger's car, and I couldn't even remember how to make a text box in PowerPoint because my memory was so just bad, but look how far I've come. My doctor gave me a questionnaire, and he told me, Brooke, you have chronic depression. And, where am I up to? He referred me on to some specialists, but I forgot to follow up, and I quickly forgot that I had chronic depression. He referred me on to, no, I'm not up to that. It was only 2 months ago that another doctor gave me anti-anxiety medication, but I also forgot to take it until my mum found the box of tablets in the cupboard and asked me why there were only 2 tablets missing if I had been given them a month ago. So, where did all this internal conflict come from? Since before high school, I can remember being creative, academically motivated. I loved school. I was always participating in classroom discussions, enthusiastically completing the tasks given to me. I do remember needing a bit of assistance keeping on track, but to me or my teachers, it was never a big issue. And that's normal, right, to stare out the window and daydream or become preoccupied with my raises or what the person next to me was doing. My parents were receiving report cards that was saying I had excellent behaviour and I was highly enthusiastic. I was what teachers would call a delight to teach and a student who had potential. Things were going really well until they weren't. When I entered high school, my issues with time management and my inability to focus started interfering with my life. Wait, that is the wrong slide. Oh, there it is. In year 9, I was already, I don't know, I'm prepared, can you tell? In year 9, I was already incredibly behind on every assignment given to me, staying up very late into the night, and sometimes, I'm really sorry, Mum, but I wouldn't sleep at all, and my parents wouldn't know about that because I'd be locked in my room and I'd do assignments all-nighters, don't recommend. Throughout year 9 to year 12, I can't remember a time I wasn't doing an assignment minutes before it was due, and had large chunks to do minutes before it was due, and I rarely, or if ever, completed assignments or anything given to me, even exams. I was always that kid scribbling at the very last minute, and then when it finished, I'd still be scribbling, and I'd be like, look, stop, that's the end of the exam. I was trying though. I was still trying to focus during class and get things done. I would compromise my social life. Sometimes I'd give up lunch breaks. I went through this phase where I just was in the library every lunch break. I would compromise spending time with friends in the weekends. I would make lists and time schedules and purchase really elaborate diaries just to get things on track. And if you know me, I love stationery and just things that are meant to help you organise. Get organised. And I bought a diary for $90 from KKK, and this is why my bank account is just not looking good. And I couldn't work out why other people didn't need to meditate every morning or read self-help books all the time to function, and I just felt like I was putting so much effort into life, but it felt like I was in reverse, and so the more revs I put into my engine, the further back I would get. It felt like my potential was up here, and I was all the way down here, and as time goes on and as time goes out, i.e. the end of my high school career, which is ultimately where you wanted to get a good OP and do well, that ladder that I needed to climb to reach my potential was getting shorter and shorter. Inevitably, this caused a lot of stress, and I had struggled immensely with what seemed like anxiety and depression to teachers and doctors. The people around me, like my teachers, friends and parents, were saying as nicely as they could, and I thanked them for saying it as nicely as they could, that it was ultimately my own doing. I had wasted so much time, I didn't prioritise the right things, I procrastinated. I had potential to do well, so ultimately it was my fault. I created an identity for myself on this vicious cycle of trying to get things done but never being able to finish them on time. I had no idea what I was doing with my life besides listening and watching and reading things on self-help, and they didn't seem to be helping. And there was so much shame. Every time I got a report card, it would say the same thing. Brooke needs to work on her time management. Brooke needs to put in more effort. The issue to solving my problems is that I just needed to listen in class and do what was required of me. I needed to stop overcomplicating everything and just get in and get it done. Ultimately, however, I knew that it was my behaviour that had made me feel this way. And behaviour is affected by the brain. And my brain, I didn't really know what was going on with my brain. So I decided to finally go and get help. I actually got help because I'd made the internal decision to go and get help a while ago. And this year I had the phone number for a psychiatrist for a month, but actually calling up the psychiatrist, making an appointment, and not cancelling it because, like I had in the past, because I thought I just do a better to-do list and follow it, it'll be all right. It really took courage for me to actually go get the help I needed. I was so scared that he was going to tell me that everything was in my head and that my identity is someone who procrastinated, or as others would put it, oh no, don't look at me, teachers. I just looked at my teachers. Oh. procrastinated, or as others put it, was lazy, was a true reflection of myself. It says change PowerPoint. Oh, that's a report card if you want to have a look. So, 2 weeks ago, I was sitting across from my psychiatrist that my doctor had referred me to after having been so fed up with not knowing and not being able to deal with what was going on in my head. I walked into his office and he sat me down and he asked me, "So Brooke, what is it that I can help you with today?" I'm not sure. No, I'm not going to skip it. It was an open-ended question and naturally I didn't know where to start. I started talking to him about how it all started in grade 7, about how I think I had depression because I had these like things where I'd like self-harm and occasionally resurface over the years, and sometimes I went through these like manic episodes of like being really depressed or really excited and anxious. And there was that time in grade 10 where I was so stressed and out of my mind I ran away. Oh, and did I mention that procrastination like ruins my life? My psychiatrist tried to have me focus on one particular topic. He kept asking me to go back to what we were talking about, and there were multiple times in the conversation where I would stare at him blankly and say, what were we talking about? And after a few more questions and talking to my parents, he finally told me, "Brooke, I believe you have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, sorry." A moment of silent passed, during which my mind had completely disregarded what he had said because I was preoccupied with the painting on his wall. And then I looked at him and remembered where I was, and I was like, "Oh, really? Whoa." Okay, I'm not sure if I'm surprised. But it was like, finally, I had answers. And the prospect of getting the help I needed, it was like that feeling you get when, like the morning of Christmas, when you're a kid and you're going to open all these great presents. When I went home that day, a lot of emotions and thoughts went through my head, which isn't unusual for me. At first I was so happy for finally getting an answer. And after years of struggling to remain focused when people were talking to me, or always doing an assignment at the absolute last minute possible, I could finally get the help I needed. But after that wave of happiness subsided, I began to feel confused and angry. How could no one have picked it up? How could my teachers and my family have seen me struggle for years and think that it was a simple issue of time management? But I realised, how can anyone help you realise you have ADHD if they don't even know what to look out for or even know that it could exist? When I was writing this speech, I did a lot of research, probably too much because I got carried away and wasn't actually writing the speech. It was so obvious to me looking at my everyday life that I had ADHD. I just didn't know it at the time. And honestly, when I told a lot of people, like my teachers and family members, some were surprised. Society has created this idea that ADHD is reserved for the young boy who can't sit still in class and is constantly out of his seat and interrupting people during conversation or getting absolutely no work done. And that's true. He might absolutely have ADHD, but ADHD shows itself differently in girls and boys. And that is a generalized statement, but it's true, and a lot of girls go undiagnosed. If you're not familiar with ADHD, it has 3 primary characteristics: inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Some people with ADHD have a presentation of both inattention and hyperactivity, which is the most common form of ADHD. Others have a more hyperactive presentation, and some have an inattentive presentation. Those are the daydreamers and the space cadets, although I might have the combination, but it doesn't really matter. When I looked at my life, I knew that it was ultimately my behaviour that had caused me so much grief. And behaviour is affected by the brain, and my brain has ADHD. Understanding the brain you're working with is really important. And that's true if you're a teacher, if you're someone's friend, if they're your boss, they're your colleague, or most importantly, if it's your own. ADHD affects between 5 and 8% of the global population, which means statistically speaking, 80 kids have it at Toowoomba State High School, 120 kids have it at Gladstone State High School, but the rates of actual ADHD diagnosis is not that number, and that needs to change. I was going to say that there was like 8 people in this room. I think my math is really off. Chances are you've already met someone with ADHD, and at some point you're going to ask yourself, what is going on in their brain? What can I tell you? First of all, it's not bad parenting or lack of discipline. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder where parts of an ADHD brain develop more slowly than in neurotypical brains. It's currently the most well-researched mental condition, and there are measurable differences in the brain. These differences are larger in children, but for most people they never go away, which means that adults have ADHD as well. This is where my PowerPoint ends, because clearly I don't have good time management, so sorry. Statistics are showing that ADHD diagnoses are increasing, and no, that's not because this generation of parents tend to not spank their children anymore. It's because understanding of ADHD from a scientific point of view is increasing. This means that girls, adults, and gifted students can have it as well. Nevertheless, the general population still have a really large misunderstanding of it. And I'm guilty of this. When my mum told me over a year ago that she thinks I could have ADHD, I screwed up my nose, got highly offended, and told her ADHD is for people who can't sit still and can never focus. And sometimes I can sit still, and sometimes I can focus. Not all the time, but don't worry, Mum. I just need to buy this really good notepad I saw online, and then it will be alright. But when I was diagnosed, I started thinking about how many times it was obvious I was struggling. Now I'm going to tell you a story, and my dear teacher, Miss Nickel, had to deal with me on this day. So we were in Japan. on a school trip, and we had a shopping day, and so our group was walking to the mall area. So we were walking, and I was looking around, and I was like, where are we? And I was like, oh, we've been here a few times, Brooke. Like, don't you recognise where you are? And I was like, no, I don't. But that's all right, because I won't get lost. I have Emily with me. But that was the worst pairing ever, because later that day, I lost my phone in Japan, where you can't really read the signs. I didn't have a SIM card either. I couldn't really call it with. Wait, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, I didn't have my phone. So turns out it was in a stationery shop where I was getting more things to get organised. I went back and was sitting there. Luckily, Japan's really safe, so it didn't get stolen. It was just sitting there in the books, and yeah, it was. I'm happy it was there. Like, that's your phone, and you're in Japan. So anyway, later we were sitting at lunch, and my friend was like, where's my shopping bag? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Are you asking me? Like, I don't know anything. And she's like, oh, I've lost it. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, whatever. Like, we'll go find it. We'll trace back our steps. So we had been to the same stationery shop. It had, like, the same logo on the front. So I also had bought stuff from that stationery shop. And we went to all the shops around, and we're like, like, have you seen a bag that looks like this? And I was holding it up to the shopkeepers. At some point throughout the day with Emily, I got lost. This is a fun time for my teachers. And I was actually lost for what they said was 5 hours, but I didn't know I was lost for 5 hours. I was like, it was like obviously 5 hours into getting lost. So I was like, oh, I should email a teacher. It felt like I'd only been lost for like an hour. And I learnt that this is because people with ADHD brains have a really skewed sense of time. Eventually, my dear old teacher found me, and well, the point of this story is that I got found, that's okay, like, I'm safe. But turns out that the bag that I got lost looking for, I was holding it up the whole time. Saying, have you seen this bag? Oh, it is a bag, don't worry. While ADHD can give you some funny and wild stories to tell, it also translates to real life dangers, like people getting into more car accidents, a significant increase in struggling with drug addiction, being more likely to get fired and divorced. Just ask my mum how many times I've left the straightener on, or the iron on, or the heater on, and then left home without knowing, and sprinting to the bus stop, because I'm sprinting to the bus stop every single day of my life. And the bus driver, he knows this, so he usually keeps an eye out for me to see if I'm... Yeah, it's really bad. I've learnt a lot of other things too, like ADHD is on a spectrum. Raise your hand if you've ever lost your phone or wallet or zoned out during a speech. And if you're not raising your hand, I'm assuming you zoned out during this one. The thing is, while everyone experiences ADHD symptoms, sometimes an actual diagnosis is based on how many of those symptoms significantly and chronically impair multiple aspects of your life. Just like you can get anxious and not have anxiety, or get sad and not have depression, you can get distracted and not have ADHD. And just like you can have mild to severe anxiety or depression, you can also have mild to severe ADHD. And on the note of losing phones, I actually lost my phone yesterday, and I got it back like 8:30 this morning. So I lose my phone all the time. One of the more interesting things I learned is, where I'm up to, is that ADHD is different in girls compared to boys, and this can often result in it being overlooked. While boys may be getting in trouble a lot at school and work, girls have more difficulty in social relationships and at home. Boys are usually more physically aggressive, like kicking, punching, and hitting, and girls are usually more verbally aggressive. Boys often interrupt others while talking. Girls tend to space out while other people are talking. Boys externalize their frustrations, and girls tend to turn pain and anger inwards. It's only been 2 weeks, but learning that I have ADHD and not a simple procrastination issue has been a rewarding journey. I can work towards getting the help I need. I can learn about strategies for someone with an ADHD brain, not strategies found in self-help books designed for people with neurotypical brains. But we need to strive to educate not just those affected by ADHD, but the people surrounding us. That means teachers, parents, and friends. ADHD is real, and it won't get any easier dealing with it if we do not have the support around us to help us cope with something that is ultimately trying to divert our attention every chance it can. A lot of people struggling with ADHD can describe their brain as a TV where someone else has the remote. Sometimes we can get stuck on a channel and can't pull ourselves away, which may look like I would rather watch videos about Taylor Swift, and sometimes that certainly is the case. But the truth is, there are plenty of times I really want to focus, but I just can't. Current understanding has to do with the ways our brains produce and metabolize neurotransmitters like responsible for hormones like dopamine and norepinephrine. That's not right, but anyway. Thankfully, ADHD is highly treatable. Medications prove to be highly effective for 80% of people and help because they stimulate these neurotransmitters in our brain to produce enough dopamine that a normal person receives when they complete everyday tasks. But it isn't enough. ADHD affects executive functions like planning, prioritizing, and our ability to sustain efforts towards a goal. It affects our ability to regulate our emotions, our behavior, and our sleep. It's not the one part of our brain that works differently, it's the whole part that works differently. Not one button on the TV remote, but all of them. And there are a lot of strategies that can help us. Therapy, meditation, regular exercise, having someone keep you accountable. I also learned that getting overwhelmed all the time had to do with poor working memory, and that making lists help. And that's also the reason if you introduce yourself with your name, like everyone does, I'll probably forget it. Please don't get offended. It's the reason why I was running late it's the reason I'm always running late and always struggling to hand in assignments. And it's not because I'm lazy, it's because I have a trouble understanding the concept of time, and that using a timer can teach me how long things actually take. I've been feeling really bad my whole high school career as to why I couldn't get assignments done until the very last second. But learning I have ADHD means I can stop comparing myself to people with the neurotypical brains and identify with people who also struggle like me. I can see the benefits to ADHD and stop staring at the negatives like I have been for years. Scientists hypothesize that ADHD, which uses prominently the inattentive type of attention, was likely beneficial when humans were evolving. It's likely that the involuntary attention was adaptive during human evolution because it helped your ability to notice slight movements in the brush, hear a trickle of water far away, or see a herd of prey galloping over the distance, and then you quickly go and you get distracted, and it helps you become like eating food instead of becoming it. However, in the modern age, where we don't have to hunt for our food, a brain that uses inattentive attention over active attention is not beneficial. That's not to say that ADHD doesn't have its benefits. People with ADHD tend to be kind, creative, and funny. Or if you're like me, where people laugh at how awkward I am and just laugh at me instead of with me. And we not only think outside the box, we don't even know there is a box. The constant movement of our mind and the constant inflow of ideas means that we're excellent at coming up with innovative ideas. And the sheer number of thoughts is astounding. Even if a lot are bad, they are great jumping off points for deeper thinking. One distraction can end up in an unending train of thought fueled by intrigue for the next thing. It's like microwave popcorn where one kernel goes off and then they all go off. ADHD can really, really suck. But we quickly get distracted. And it's important to know that if you do have ADHD, you're not weird and you're not stupid. You don't need to try harder, you just need better coping mechanisms. You're not a failed version of normal. If you don't have ADHD, chances are you know somebody who does. They're your employees, your boss, your friend. They're in this room. I hope that together we can work towards a world with more compassion for people with ADHD and not only help them understand how to survive, but to also thrive. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brooke. So when Rachel and I met with Brooke last week, I think it was only... Here she goes. It had only been a week since she had been diagnosed with ADHD, and the excitement that she showed in that room up at Headspace was just incredible. She was so pumped that she'd found out after all these years what was wrong and some answers. It's a roller coaster with Brooke. I've only known Brooke for a short amount of time, and that 20 minutes was a fair reflection of my experiences with her. So to see her excited about getting some answers is really cool. And and we're out of time, so thank you, Brooke. No, we're not. It was just a long... We gave them a guideline of 7 to 10 minutes, so... 45. No, not quite, but we're getting there. Okay. Our next speaker is Zara, and she's going to speak on sporting pressures. Yep. Take it away. Thanks, Zara.
Sports comes with injuries. It's a fact of life. Whether it's a rolled ankle, fractured leg, strained hamstring, or broken nose. Play long enough and you will get hurt. Professional clubs have an army of medics, trainers, physiotherapists on the payroll to deal with these mishaps quickly, with seriously injured players rushed straight to hospital and into surgery, then supported through rehabilitation. But what happens when it isn't a physical condition, but a psychological one? Having experienced multiple injuries in my sporting career, from a knock to the head to a ball in the thigh, I can assure you I was taken care of straight away, making sure I was fit enough to play the remaining minutes of the game. Some weekends, the games were close.
there was a lot of pressure to score. Me, being a striker, I would always get frustrated with every little mistake I made. Now, when this happened, I wasn't talked to at halftime or quarter time to see if my mindset was right. Instead of checking, it was assumed that I'd brush it off and it was fine. The case was, sometimes I could brush it off, but other times I couldn't. Now, to help myself, I would sub myself off to regain my thoughts, have a drink, and go back out on the field. Now, this follows on with my next point. Sporting codes are still not up to scratch in terms of dealing with mental health problems. If there's a problem serious happening on the field, then it should be handled straight away, as it can escalate very quickly. As a high-performing athlete, I'm expected to complete at all levels to the best of my ability. This is very stressful, as I may not be feeling like myself due to injury or illness, or other factors which affect my mental capability and therefore my ability to play at my best. Me, being the person I am, I don't like to disappoint people when they expect something of me. Now, in dealing with this problem of pressure, it is key to keep calm and take a minute to regain your thoughts. I've brought my hockey stick with me today. On my hockey stick, there are 4 points to help me stay calm during the game, to help deal with stress and pressure. Breathe. Take a deep breath and reset. Think positive. Think that you can get this ball or you can make that run. Visualize. If you get this ball, what are you going to do with it? And 4, do your best. Play your own style and you will succeed. A common factor that leads to pressure is if a coach or parent is constantly yelling at players to do this and do that, but when in reality, they're only doing their best. And if their best isn't enough, then you shouldn't coach or you shouldn't watch. Here's a little story. In a sporting team, there's a young individual and their parent coaches the team they play in. Now each week, I watch their games and it's disappointing to see their parents yelling at the players and umpires saying they're doing the wrong thing or that was a bad call. After every game, this young player comes off crying, thinking he hasn't done his job, due to the fact that their parent and coach was constantly yelling at them. People need to remember that we're only human and we make mistakes. Everyone does it. I have experienced some of my closest friends under pressure. They didn't know how to deal with it, and it was disappointing to see because they're really good people, but they have not been given the attention to help deal with it. If an athlete is experiencing pressure, it's more likely because we perceive that there are expectations placed upon them. However, similar to pressure, expectations are imaginary visions into the future. Athletes often begin to experience pressure when they begin imagining what may occur if the desired outcome isn't achieved. Athletes are known for either choking or excelling under extreme pressurized circumstances. Often we see a fear of failure tied to pressure, which can either fuel or exhaust athletes' efforts. A few examples of how fear plays into athletes' performance include the fear of disappointing others, so your coach, parents, spectators, and your teammates. The fear of feeling embarrassed if you underperform, so if you miss that shot, what are people going to think of you? And the fear of losing the place on the team. When I run, there are trials. Whether you win or lose, there are no exceptions. So for me to proceed to the next level, I need to win the first trial, the second trial, and the third trial to have achieved my desired outcome. If the desired outcome is not achieved and it's a regular occurrence, then the pressure levels build up and athletes start to stress more. Multiple things can happen from this outcome, and sometimes it isn't always just disappointment. It can also lead to sleeping disorders, depression and anxiety, eating disorders, and substance misuse of drug and alcohol. A downfall when getting help for this situation is that in regional areas like Gladstone are not equipped with the same services as somebody in Brisbane. This makes it harder to find a good place where you can go and talk about what is going on and ways to help the situation. At every stage in an athlete's sporting career, they're going to experience stress. Some ways to help me stay calm is going to my happy place. This can be as simple as thinking of an object or place that makes you happy. My happy place would have to be the beach or my hockey stick. Another way to help stay calm is having a routine. By routine, I mean a comfortable idea of what is going to happen in your day. If something unexpected comes up, then you should learn to adapt to the situation quickly with no problem. Here are some simple techniques which can be used to both control pressure and improve the performance in high pressure situations. Embrace the moment. Living in the present moment is so important. There's no point worrying about the past and also being anxious about the future. The only thing you're able to take control of is the moment you have with you right now. It gives you the answer for your future and justifies learnings from the past. Don't overtry. Don't try and impress people with fancy skills or techniques. Do what's comfortable for you and you'll be guaranteed to do your best. Breathe. Deep breathing is one of the best ways to lower stress in the body. This is because when you breathe deeply, it sends a message to your brain to calm down and relax. The brain then sends a message to your body to do the same. Stay focused. One reason athletes lose confidence and choke in competition is because they lose focus on the wrong things. By learning to focus on the right things, an athlete can keep or regain confidence in their game and avoid choking. Positive self-talk. Another important factor of positive self-talk that it must be believable and possible. Research supports the theory that an athlete who continually practices positive self-talk will improve his or her sports performance. Visualization. Visualization is primarily used as a training tool, one that improves the quality of athletic movement, increases the power of concentration, and serves to reduce the pressures of competition on the athlete while building their confidence. Being an athlete, you're not always going to succeed with a win, but that's what builds up self-confidence and team bonding. Sporting pressure is a real thing. Many sporting clubs are not aware of how serious it can become. We're only worried about our physical health, but mentally we need to be strong, if not even stronger. If you can see somebody having a hard time concentrating or they're not their self, check in with them and see if there's anything you can do to help the situation become better. Think to yourself, how can I help? I'm Zara Nash. I'm 15 years old and I have experienced sporting pressure on multiple occasions. And I have ways to deal with it. But there are some people that struggle when dealing with it, and I want to see that fixed. Nobody should be left to do it on their own. Thank you.
Again, when Rachel and I met with Zara, we spoke about a couple of different things. I'm sure there's many of us in the room tonight that play sport, that are involved in sporting clubs, whether it's through school, whether it's organised, structured sport, whatever it is. If you see young people that aren't themselves, ask them, tap them on the shoulder, ask them if they're okay. If you see someone yelling at a young player from the sideline, tell them to stop, call them out, and don't let it happen. I think there are a couple of messages that Zara would like to deliver tonight. Our last speaker for the night is Sarah, and she will be speaking about relationships and mental health. Thanks, Sarah.
So everyone so far has done really great. Good job, guys. You're actually crushing it. I'm going to hopefully end the night with a bang. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Everyone in this room has been in a relationship, whether that relationship be romantic or platonic in nature. Relationships with other people are incredibly rewarding and they are vital to maintain a healthy headspace. But what happens if your relationship is actually damaging your mental health? Even in healthy relationships with others, things can happen that may take a toll on you mentally. Relationships don't have to be toxic or abusive to impact you negatively sometimes. Particularly amongst young people, venting can become something that negatively impacts relationships. Venting refers to the act of coming to someone with your personal problems. Venting can be a constructive way to let out a little steam after a long day, or maybe to get advice about an issue you're having. But like everything, it can sometimes be bad. If you're coming to someone continuously to vent, it can soon become too much for that person to handle. Discussing a hard day with a friend is very different to discussing more serious aspects of your mental health on a day-to-day basis. The person you're venting to can quickly become overwhelmed and may not know the best way to handle the information you're giving them. I myself have been in a situation where someone came to me with problems that were way out of my depth. Around February this year, my girlfriend started to come to me with a lot of incredibly serious personal problems. I knew she was diagnosed with chronic depression and PTSD, but we never had a true conversation about what that meant or how that would affect her. Discussions surrounding some very troubling topics became a near daily occurrence. After a while of this, it was starting to affect my own mental health. I didn't feel comfortable having those serious conversations with her as I had no idea how to go about helping her. I wanted to help, but I didn't feel equipped to help her in a constructive way. Things eventually escalated to the point where I was concerned about her physical welfare. I then had to make a difficult decision. Possibly sacrifice her trust in me and tell her that she needed professional help, or continue being her sole support person and sacrifice my own mental health. I ended up choosing the first option, and to this day, I believe I made the right decision. One day, I sat her down and explained that she needed to talk to her social worker about what was happening. Of course, she was hurt at first, and I honestly did feel a little guilty about not directly supporting her. Although, little did I know, I supported her in the best way possible, referring her on to someone who is trained to help her improve her mental health. Since this, our relationship has ultimately improved. We can both now, healthily, come to each other with our personal problems. Now that I'm no longer her sole support person, it's a lot easier for her to confide in me as a girlfriend rather than as a therapist. Some of you in the audience may be listening to my story and realizing that some of my words are mirroring your own experiences. And that's okay. A lot of people feel overwhelmed with their friends' problems, and it can quickly build up to be a source of anxiety and ultimately negatively impact their own mental well-being. If you find yourself in a situation where you're someone's sole support person, but you don't feel equipped to handle that task, there's absolutely ways you can help them. Sometimes your friend or partner might just need a little bit of extra support. Showing them resources regarding healthy coping mechanisms and self-care can go a long way. If you believe that someone needs help beyond a listening ear and some resources, it might be a good idea to discuss whether professional help is necessary for them. Sometimes the person may already have someone they're seeing professionally, and that's great. Then a conversation surrounding personal boundaries may be... Wow, what does that say? Woo! Then a conversation surrounding personal boundaries may be necessary. If you're sitting in the audience today, you're either a parent of someone here, or you're a teacher, you're a principal, you're possibly a counsellor, you could coach a sports team, and I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight. A great step that you guys could take to support your own young people in your community would be to provide us with the skills we need to be a responsible first point of contact for people in crisis. I know I've been to an event called Safe Talk, where they basically teach you of what to do if someone comes to you with information you're not quite sure how to handle. Going one step further, providing mental health first aid training for students is also something that many industry professionals view to be a great idea to teach a new generation of adults how to properly tackle mental health. Ultimately, I'd like every person in this audience today to know that they're not alone. Every person experiences relationship struggles at one point in their life. There are resources and community organisations out there that can help you if you or your friend or your partner are struggling. Stay safe and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Sarah, for your insightful speech on relationships and maintaining positive relationships. Once again, can we please have a massive round of applause for this amazing group of youth? All of the youth members here tonight have spoken so courageously, and I think we can all agree that their speeches have been both informative and heartwarming. Whilst there have been many great tips on managing mental health throughout this event, it's just as important to acknowledge that some things mentioned tonight may have resonated with you in an unexpected way. We encourage sticking to tonight's theme and seeking support or checking in with friends and family if anything mentioned has felt a bit heavy. It's not weak to speak. We also encourage implementing some self-care after the event, remembering that self-care is not only a tool used in crisis situations, but often most effective when regularly practiced. You have all been the most amazing audience, and we can't thank you enough for your presence tonight and enthusiasm towards breaking the stigma around youth mental health. We appreciate your patience with us and judgment-free support throughout this event. I think that deserves a round of applause from me. I don't know. Thank you, guys. Although that's a wrap on all of our speakers for tonight, it's not a wrap on the continued conversations about youth mental health. We hope we have started the ball rolling on speaking out about ill mental health, encouraging self-care, and helping to reduce the stigma. If you're wondering how to help from here, continuing the conversations on youth mental health is a perfect place to start. When we replace the I with we, even illness becomes wellness. I'll now pass over to Jordan to close the event. Once again, thank you so much, and I hope you can all remember to take time for yourselves and others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abby. Just in closing, I'd once again like to thank Rachel, Rosebery, and Rosebery's Headspace program. David and Nikki are here as well today, I believe. They did a fair bit of work with our young people in the lead up to the event, and I'm sure they're going to see them post-event as well. Rachel was... we did all the background stuff with the young guys, and while there were some challenging moments in getting responses to text messages, getting people to turn up, we tried calling, email, we tried all sorts of things. We got there in the end, and I believe I can say on behalf of Rachel, Brady, Kate and our team, the Headspace and Rosebery crew, we're really, really proud of the young people that have gotten up and spoken today and delivered some really, really important messages. I think it's been fantastic. I hope everyone takes something out of it tonight, and I hope we can, as Abby mentioned a few times, continue the conversation post-event immediately if you'd like to have a tea and coffee really quickly, but going forward into the future as well. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, CQU, Owen, Headspace, Rosebery, and especially the young people here tonight. And Michelle, sorry. Thank you, Michelle, for being here as well. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.